Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, let's talk about the greatness of chapter 921. I've had my moment to cool off, we're good now. And I actually want to start off with the cover of Shonen Jump this week, which featured One Piece more than anything else. You have Kaido behind Luffy and Zoro holding Katetsu blades. As a heads up, a theory that I'll be making either later on this week or next week will actually use this page as evidence. But really what I just want to bring up, because now it seems like a good time to do it, I know that other people have talked about this sometime in the past, but I've never mentioned it. We can see that both Zoro's and Luffy's Katetsu blades have the same exact guard. This seems to be a feature that is shared between all the Katetsu blades, but obviously we know that there is not just two of them, there is a third one somewhere, and it seems like we've seen it before, because there's another sword that we've seen with the same exact hilt, and that's from the bald Gorosei. So it seemed really likely to me that he has the last Katetsu blade, the one that is of the highest grade. Which also means that Zoro is not going to acquire all three Katetsu blades in the conclusion of this arc. Now, moving on from random thoughts, is anyone else just kind of confused, right? So we spent a good deal of this chapter, and I kind of want to talk about it, but I'm not sure if it's relevant or not. I'm not sure how to make it relevant. We spent a large portion of this chapter talking about what the plan was. And at the end of this chapter, we have Kaido appearing out of the sky, seemingly going to ruin said plan. For me, this is a huge thinking emoji moment. Right, as an author, Oda has no need to tell us the details of the plan if the plan is going to be ruined immediately. Right, so let's think back to Whole Cake Island, because Whole Cake Island was full of masterful, infallible plans. Luffy and Capone and the group were intending on killing Big Mom at the tea party. And we got a whole bunch of huge setup revolving around that, which seems to be pretty much similar to what's going on now. It's all pretty much straightforward, right? Everyone has some sort of job that they are intending to do, but the huge focal point of the plan in Wano is to remain inconspicuous until the moment is right. This is like having a plan of taking down Big Mom at the tea party with Big Mom literally staring at you. Meanwhile nodding and agreeing that's a pretty solid plan. So this is what I take from this, guys, because Oda has emphasized his plan to such an absurd degree at this point, with Kaido literally in the sky telling Jack to find them, is that the Beast Pirates will somehow fail. And this plan will in large part be successful, somehow. And so how is that even possible? The only thing that I can really come up with is that after Kaido has told Jack to find people, he's going to go back to his island and assume that his minions are going to carry out the task. Meanwhile, the Straw Hats will either avoid the eyes of the Shogun and the Calamities, or take them on secretly. I guess my point is that however it happens, whatever it takes, we will get to this fire festival. Now, as for the plan itself, this is how I understood it from this last chapter. Essentially, there's going to be a huge party that's going to be thrown during this fire festival. And so during this time in which everybody is drunk, the Straw Hats and their allies are planning to group together to go to Kaido's island, which is supposed to be where the Shogun is going, but they don't actually go, they party instead, and then defeat Kaido while they're all drunk. I have no doubt that this will absolutely and spectacularly fail. There is no way that they are going to ignore all of the Calamities and the Shogun and then defeat Kaido. It's just no way. And if you've read enough One Piece, you know that the Strats usually don't go after the boss until they have at least defeated some of his strongest subordinates. And so here I just want to remind you guys of things that we know are going to happen. First off, Big Mom is going to show up in Wano. Second off, it seems really likely that the world government and the Marines will make a presence as well. That being said, I think all of these events will somehow occur at the same time during this fire festival. That is to say that the Strats, their plan will fail, they'll have to face, Jack or the Shogun, something will happen, maybe they'll have just defeated him, Kaido will be roused, and then everybody shows up. Of course, there's a lot of possibility, but I just feel like that timing is the best timing. And I think for certain that Oda will throw in some sort of major 1v1 fight before we get to Kaido. And before other factions start arriving, before it becomes a complete melee. Anyway, Kinemon created a symbol which he's going to use to sort of get everyone on board with what the plan is. I have a really strong feeling that this symbol, while it has a meaning right now that Kinemon explained, is going to have some sort of double meaning by the time that we actually get there. Like, this symbol might in some way foreshadow what ends up happening, which is different from the plan. My only issue is that it seems likely if Kinemon's followers can understand the message, then it should be possible for the Shogun or Kaido's forces to potentially understand it as well. And even beyond this, there may be people that have turned coat. People that were once loyal to Oden, but now are loyal to the Shogun. So this just could be another way in which the plan is in some way compromised or fails. So according to Kinemon, Usopp and Zoro were supposed to be in the capital, but the reason for why that they were supposed to be in the capital is not explained. Frankie is supposed to obtain the blueprints to Kaido's lair. Robin is supposed to get close to Orochi in order to spy. Kinemon is kind of mysterious about Brook's abilities, saying that they would be useful in securing food supplies. And the only thing that really comes to mind is the idea that the Shogun is afraid that the ghosts of the Kozuki will return. My guess is that Brook is going to be used to scare away the people guarding the food. Or maybe to something more specific to Wano itself, because he's some kind of spirit that they'll give him offerings. And Nami and surprisingly Chopper are both going to be ninja. But going back a few pages, it was pointed out that Kinemon is actually married to Otsuru. And I'll be honest guys, I do not like it. Not because I don't think that Kinemon is a match for her. We don't know much about Otsuru to begin with. She seems kind of cool. And as we've talked about before, I think that she's kind of mysterious. But Kinemon is straight disrespectful. It's just not the kind of marriage that I personally would be comfortable with. You take an old married couple and you know, the husband is checking out the young girls. I understand that happens sometimes, but it's not funny to me. I mean, this is possible that this is just simply a cultural difference between the United States and Japan, but from a United States perspective, it just kind of gives me the impression that Kinemon is not all that committed to Otsuru. And to be honest with you, I get the impression that Kinemon is actually avoiding her. So maybe Kinemon and Otsuru are not actually married, that is just what they say. I actually have an asshat theory on Twitter if you guys want to go follow me on Twitter just to see that. I may end up talking about that at some point in time, but this whole situation is just weird to me. But yeah, this definitely seems like a situation where I might just think too much about it, so we're gonna move on. We got to meet another Kunoichi in this chapter, Shinobu, who is fugly. Sorry. I don't know what it is with ninjas in One Piece, with Raizo and Shinobu, but they're some funny looking people. Although if I'm completely fair, even some of the samurai look, you know, kind of like what? Like for instance, Shutenmaru, who is pretty likely, it seems like to me, to be Ashura Doji. Kinemon said that they need to find 3 particular samurai above any others, Kawamatsu, Denjiro, and Ashura Doji, where you see silhouettes of them, and the silhouette in the middle looks exactly like Shutenmaru. So for now, I'm just going to assume that this is Ashura Doji. The story I'm going with in my head is that if you guys remember, Ashura Doji was initially a brigand in the Lawless Curry, and then Oden came in and sort of fixed up the place and gave everybody sort of jobs and responsibilities. So at this point in time, Ashura Doji became a subordinate of Oden, but once he had died, given all these years afterwards, he's sort of gone back to his old ways, which we see in this last chapter when he's stealing food from the peasants. But yeah, regardless of whether or not this is Ashura Doji or Shutenmaru, same person, different person, doesn't really matter. It doesn't really change my perspective because I'm left at this chapter, even though he's stealing food from the peasants, with a positive impression of him. He's basically doing this because he's given up on the future of Wano. Despite being a little bit rough around the edges, he's clearly painted out to be an enemy of Kaido and the Beast Pirates, which makes him an ally of the Straw Hats. And I would say that he definitely seems strong enough to be relevant. I mean, he was fighting Jack, and it seems as though he is at least of comparable strength. Like, they could fight and that fight would be exciting. He even calls Jack a small fry. I get the impression in this chapter that in the past, Shutenmaru actually fought Kaido himself and survived, and that is why Kaido wants to recruit him as his subordinate. Either way, I think I'm already a pretty huge Shutenmaru or Ashura Doji fan. And I really do prefer him and other samurai to potentially be able to power scale as equals or roughly equals to Yonko commanders. I think that Oda has hyped samurai up, and for them to be just straight below anybody of relevance in Kaido's crew would be underwhelming. I see a lot of people talking about how Jack took another L and, you know, he's been disgraceful and anybody who's a fan of Jack should be disappointed, but I'm really thinking about it from the other angle. I am now officially buying into the samurai hype. If you take the very strongest samurai, and I would assume that Ashura Doji or Shutenmaru would be in that class, they are strong enough to actually do something. I like that. But I also want to reiterate that we don't know how that fight would actually play out, right? Jack took an attack from Shutenmaru. That does not mean that he is weaker. It just means that it would be a comparable fight. And I'll be honest guys, this hypes me up even more than I was previously for the Wano arc itself. Obviously at some point in time we're expecting greater forces to arrive, the Big Mom pirates, potentially marines, admirals, etc. But until we get to then, we have the calamities and the samurai. And essentially what this sets up to me is, yes, there are samurai that are allied with Kinemon, but there will also be samurai that are allied with the Shogun, which we will have to fight. And now I have no reason to expect them to be scrubs. And this really, I think, completes the narrative that Oda set out a long time ago, that Wano Kuni as a country by itself is formidable. But before we move on to this, in this chapter, Jack was called an all-star, not a calamity. And I'm not sure if this is a new thing. If this was what was stated before, please let me know, but I don't think that it was. This seems to be a new title. I'm just kind of curious if Jack is still a calamity. Like, has all of his recent failures led Kaido to demote him? Because it really feels extra, it feels unnecessary to give Kaido 2 titles. He's an all-star and a calamity. Perhaps this suggests that there is another rank above headliner, but below calamity. Granted, I don't really think that this is the case, but it is definitely a thought that occurred to me. Anyway, Kaido is a dragon. As you guys will know, I've already made a video on this topic. This hyped me out so much that I literally had to take a day to just chill out. But one thing that I didn't talk about before, that I've been thinking about more as I have reread the chapter, is that the weather was doing some very weird things when Kaido made his entrance. And I just wonder if this possibly suggests that Kaido as a dragon has some capabilities in controlling the weather. This is not unheard of in the lore of dragons. In addition to this, it's highly suggested that Momonosuke's artificial devil fruit was created, I think, to probably mimic Kaido's powers. And Momonosuke also has some ability to manipulate or control the weathers. He can produce clouds. I would assume that this is related to perhaps a weaker version of what Kaido himself can do. So if you thought that he was unbeatable, given everything that we explicitly know, there's probably more reasons to believe that he is unbeatable. Also, this quote really intrigues me. People often say if it is a one-on-one, Kaido will win. On land, sea, and air, among all living things, he is a pirate who is known as the strongest creature. It specifically says on land, sea, and air. Obviously, we can see his strength on land and in the air, but this comment about the sea also gives me the impression that Kaido can actually perhaps have similar control over the sea itself, which again is not unheard of in the lore of dragons. And I guess now is our job for the next however long year to figure out how exactly the Strats are going to defeat him. But anyway, the things that I enjoy from this chapter really can be broken down into 3 parts. You have the plan, the idea of the plan, explanation of the plan, everything involving that, which seems to likely be relevant, but probably not be successful. At least not entirely in the way that they are envisioning. And this chapter also gave us Samurai and Kaido hype. The Kaido hype at the end pretty much by itself sold this chapter as an A+. But as always guys, I'm curious as to what you guys thought about it, whether you noticed something that I might have missed. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always guys, have a wonderful day.